morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Oh, we can do better than that. Good morning. Thank you. We are glad that you could make time to be with us today for this year's Africa-China reporting project event. We've been hosting these events for quite a couple of years now, since this initiative kicked off in 2009, becoming one of the first and only on the continent. I know there are competitors that have come up in recent years, but we are pioneers in terms of focusing on Africa-China matters, media, journalism, communication. We have a very interesting full program. And so rather than do a lengthy introduction of the event, let's just launch into it. And I would like to start us off by calling on our Dean, Professor Mucha Msemwa, to start us off. Prof, you're most welcome to the podium. And after that, we run with the program as we go on. Thank you.
Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
A very good morning to you all. This meeting was not started at 10 for nothing. It was meant to give you a bit of time to wake up. So I believe you have woken up now. So, ladies and gentlemen, what an absolute pleasure it is to welcome you all to the Africa-China Journalist Forum right here at WETS. I'm thrilled to see such a dynamic gathering of journalists, researchers, and our esteemed guests, including Mr. Qingjiang, Consul General of China in South Africa, and the other guests from the consulate, and Ms. Lerato Mashianoke, Program Manager at the Ford Foundation, Southern Africa, the head of the School of Language, Literature and Media, Professor Den Ojwang, who's sitting right there at the back, Dr. Dinesh Balia, the director of the WETS Center of Journalism, and all other esteemed guests. I know you're not here to listen to a lengthy speech, and I promise not to make one, but let's take a moment to appreciate the fact that you, dedicated professionals, have pressed pause on your reporting sites to join us. Today, we are not just convening as members of the journalistic fraternity, but we are building bridges with researchers and engaging in a thoughtful exchange of ideas right here at WETS. All thanks to the Africa-China Reporting Project. Speaking of which, this venue, the Humanities Graduate Center, is the ideal backdrop of discussions that delve deeper into the intricate tapestry of Africa-China relations. Here at WETS, we spend our time with postgraduate students navigating the local, global misrepresentations or just representations of the Global South community. Our mission is very clear: to provide an intellectually enriching, professionally empowering, and socially supportive environment for our students. I assure you, your topics today align seamlessly with the issues we ponder over in this very space. Once again, as I promised before, I won't keep you from your discussions for too long, but it is crucial that we acknowledge the paramount importance of the safety, security, and well-being of our journalists. In the midst of conflict or war, as we sadly witness in various parts of the world, no journalist should ever face harm for uncovering social, political, or in environmental injustices. Disagreements with their reporting should be settled in the arena of ideas, just like the one we find ourselves in today. Rational discourse triumphs over the use of power and force to stifle voices and critics. Although it might not be on today's agenda, I feel compelled to mention the distressing situations faced by journalists in conflict zones, such as the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict. It's a conversation worth having, considering the plight of journalists, as well as the vulnerable populations caught in the crossfire. Before I wrap up, a heartfelt thank you to you all, the organizers, for putting together what promises to be an electrifying event. Special thanks once again to Mr. Pan Qingjiang and Ms. Lerato Mashianoke for their invaluable contributions, and to our indefatigable Director, Dr. Dinesh Balia. Your dedication to the Vets Center for Journalism is truly commendable. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to simply say that I will miss this part of the event, as I have just stepped out of a meeting, a very crucial meeting, to which I am supposed to go back. But I do wish you interesting, exciting, enriching deliberations today, and I declare this meeting open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Msemwa. I think now we'll proceed to the rest of the program. I would like to just note that our colleague Lerato Mashanoke from Ford Foundation hasn't been able to make it because she had an emergency that she has to deal with. But we have a very good panel of speakers to start us off, even as we thank Professor Msemwa for having given us the opening remarks. So I'll call upon our speakers, starting with Consul General, if you can come to the front, to Ms. Bongiwe Tutu, who is the key person here, in fact. I think you can just come and take your seats. And Wansala, Justus Wansala. And this session essentially is China and Africa, ground level perspectives, impacts of media's local to global engagements. I think all protocols observed. I would like now to invite Mr. Pan Qingjiang, who is the Chinese Consul General here in South Africa. I think we can appreciate him with a round of applause as we invite him over.
Dear fellow journalists and researchers, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for having me at this annual Africa-China Journalist Forum to brief you and share views with you about China-South Africa relations. Actually, I just arrived in this beautiful country and assumed office as new Chinese Consul General in Johannesburg only 1 week ago. So I feel honored to give my first talk before public audience here on this occasion. It's my honor and my pleasure. I came at a special time of year, which marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between our two countries. With the bilateral relationship entering, we quote, a golden era. I tell my consulate colleagues that golden era means more opportunities. In the meantime, more responsibilities. So here I wish also to share with you this belief of mine to all of you who care for and work towards the advancement of our bilateral relations. Ladies and gentlemen, China-South Africa friendship has defied the obstacles of mountains and oceans. Facing the sudden onslaught of COVID-19, China was among the first to provide anti-pandemic supplies to South Africa, reaffirming our special brotherhood. More recently, China also provided to the country emergency power equipment. Over the past 25 years, our relationship has achieved leapfrog development from a partnership to a strategic partnership, and then to the current, a comprehensive strategic partnership. It is one of the most vibrant bilateral relations in the developing world. In recent years, our two presidents have maintained frequent communication through visits, meetings, phone calls, and letters. Our strategic mutual trust has been deepening steadily. We give each other firm support on issues involving our respective core interests and major concerns, and maintain coordination on major international and regional issues. We work together to practice true multilateralism and push for the building of a more just and equitable international order. South Africa was the first African country to sign the Belt and Road Cooperation document with China. It has been China's biggest trading partner in Africa for 14 consecutive years, as well as of the African countries, one of the African countries with the largest stock of Chinese investment. The pie of bilateral cooperation is getting bigger. South Africa's wines, rooibos tea, and aloe vera gels are trending products in China. Many Chinese companies are expanding their operation and at the same time taking more social responsibilities in South Africa. Automobiles and home appliances with Chinese brand, yet made in South Africa, are very popular among local consumers and are now owned by numerous South African households. South African companies are also racing to invest in the Chinese market to seize the abundant business opportunities, and they have made important contribution to China's economic growth. Our cultural exchanges are also very vibrant, bringing our two people's heart closer. A large number of Chinese tourists we can see have come to this beautiful country to enjoy the nature and the culture. South Africa is home to the largest number of Confucius institutes and Confucius classrooms in Africa. It has incorporated the Chinese language in its national education system, and South Africans are ever more passionate about learning Chinese language and understanding the Chinese culture. Now, the China-South Africa relationship is standing at a new historical starting point. It has gone beyond the bilateral scope and carries increasingly important global influence. During the state visit by President Xi in August this year to the South Africa, the two heads of the state reached a series of consensus charting the plan for a new chapter of our comprehensive strategic partnership. The two sides are undertaking to increase our experience sharing on governance and firmly support each other in independently exploring a path to modernization that suits our respective national conditions. The two countries need to work with each other as real partners to push forward our relations amid the changing international landscape. The two sides are undertaking to strengthen pragmatic cooperation. We will succeed because of our biggest strengths in high economic complementarity and the solid foundation for cooperation. We need to further synergize development strategies, promote stronger cooperation in infrastructure, digital economy, scientific and technological innovation, and energy transition, and ensure that more people of our two countries will benefit from the development outcomes. China welcomes more South African products to its market and encourages more Chinese companies to invest and do business in South Africa as an effort of support for South Africa's target to double its inbound investment over the next 5-year period. The two sides are undertaking to inherit China-Africa relationship. We need to leverage the all-round, multi-tiered, and institutionalized mechanisms for people-to-people exchanges between our two countries, and continue to advance exchanges and cooperation in culture, tourism, education, sports, media, universities, subnational governments, and the youth. We must keep the spirit of China-Africa friendship and cooperation as alive and strong as ever across the vast lands of China and Africa. The two sides are undertaking to be champions of our common interest. What the world needs today is peace, not conflict. What the world wants is coordination, not confrontation. China and South Africa, as natural members of the Global South, should all the more work together to appeal for greater voice and influence of developing countries in international affairs. China is ready to work with South Africa and other African countries to strengthen cooperation through platforms and mechanisms, including BRICS, G20, United Nations, FOCAC, and Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, to build a stronger China-Africa relationship and more productive China-Africa cooperation. and to provide more fresh impetus to global development and ensure greater stability of the world. Looking ahead, China stands ready to work with South Africa to continuously enrich the China-South Africa comprehensive strategic partnership and take bilateral relations to a new level. We will make even greater progress in the building of a China-Africa community with a shared future in the new era, as well as the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, our Consul General cover two provinces, Gauteng and the Free State. The consulate is committed to reaching out to make more friends from all walks of life and sparing no efforts to promote exchanges and cooperation in various fields at subnational level. I'm happy to note that under the relentless efforts of the Consulate General, last June, Premier Lasufi of Gauteng Province led a delegation to Chongqing, Zhejiang, Shanghai, and Beijing of China. Last September, Premier Dukwana of the Free State led his delegation to visit Jiangsu and Jiangxi provinces. During their visits, the two sides have reached a series of consensus on cooperation, ranging from infrastructure, trade, energy, transportation, education, health, and tourism, etc. There have been also many Chinese delegations recently visiting the two provinces for the expansion of exchanges and cooperation. Besides, under the two brands of the Consulate General, which are we call Driving Education Culture and Lapa Forum, more than 20 students from universities got the chance to visit China and attended cultural exchange projects. One essay writing competition and one short video competition have been held among high school students to provide platforms for them to demonstrate their dedication, creativity, and passion for education and their expectations for China-South Africa relations. Around 5 primary schools have been supported with thousands of school packages to better equip students. We also have organized 5 forums inviting youth representatives, women from all walks of life, experts and scholars, and journalists to share views on issues of common interest relating China, South Africa, and China-Africa relations. Amity between the people holds the key to sound state-to-state relations. The Consulate General will continue to do our best to deepen mutually beneficial cooperation and cultural exchanges between our two countries, especially two provinces in our consular district. Ladies and gentlemen, our relationship would not grow strength to strength without the engagement of media and academia. You are playing a crucial role in fostering and enhancing this relationship. We value and appreciate your hard work in both coverage and research about China and China-South Africa China-Africa relations. We are willing to maintain close connection and interaction with you all and to help facilitate your adequate access to relevant information and ideas. The Chinese Embassy's initiative to organize journalist teams, providing them with opportunities to visit China and attend training projects, reflects a commitment to fostering a deeper understanding of each other's cultures and perspectives. This not only enriches the storytelling process, but also contributes to a more comprehensive portrayal of the bilateral relationship. To empower journalists in their coverage, our consulate is taking active steps. The Consulate General regularly publishes the latest information about South Africa-China relations on its website, creating a centralized hub for journalists to access reliable, I hope, and up-to-date resources. I encourage all of you to visit our website as a source of information to enhance the accuracy and the depth of your reporting. Furthermore, the Consulate General is committed to creating opportunities for journalists to engage with stakeholders directly through public events held by the Consulate General. Journalists will have the chance to interact with key figures, gaining insights that go beyond official statements. This direct engagement will contribute to a more holistic understanding of China-South Africa relations. Ladies and gentlemen, looking back, China-South Africa friendship has borne abundant fruit. Looking forward, China-South Africa cooperation has broad prospects. Let's join hands to make our contribution for the materialization of this promising future. I thank you very much for your attention. I wish the forum a big success. Thank you. I hope my talk will not be, it's not a lengthy one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think another round of applause to Consul General. We really thank you, Mr. Pan, that this is your first public meeting only a week into your tour of duty. We really appreciate that you could make time to give us these very kind words. We definitely are going to capture those and publish them on our website as well, and we greatly appreciate. So I think we'll move on now to the next speaker, who is going to speak to us on the importance of capacity building in Africa's media space. This is Ms. Bongiwe Tutu, is a project coordinator at WIT's Africa-China Reporting Project, which is within the WIT Center for Journalism. The floor is yours. Welcome. Let's give her a round of applause as she makes her way.
Thank you very much, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Sanibonani. Ninjani. Thank you. That's good. Yampila namingos. Thank you, Bob. Thank you to the rest of our panelists, and thank you to the Consulate General, Mr. Pang Qingjiang, for his address. And thank you all for attending this Africa-China Journalists Forum, which this year also includes the photo exhibition. and also would like to thank our professors for opening our forum, Professor Mucha Musemwa, the Dean of Humanities, as well as Professor Dan Ojwang for gracing us with his presence, and as well as our director at the Wits Center for Journalism, Dr. Dinesh Balia. I'm thanking them in their absence for joining us this morning. So to our speakers and moderators throughout the 5 sessions of the program, thank you as well for your forthcoming contributions. And then most importantly to our esteemed guests, our media and colleagues who have traveled from far and wide to join us here today. Welcome all to Wits University, welcome to Johannesburg, welcome to South Africa, and thank you all for being here. We look forward to your participation and the learning exchange that we will be having today. So the forum today is going to be presenting discussions on the role of the media for local global representations of the Global South community, South Africa-China relations, looking at the local engagements, impacts and developments being garnered in society, and Africa's responses to climate crisis, to climate change, and the impacts of the just transition in local community groups as well as women. We will also be learning about digital innovations from Chinese and US investors in Africa, reports on the African media landscape, looking at West, East, North, and Southern Africa. We'll also be learning about China's footprint in East Africa. Further with learning, we'll be hearing on artificial intelligence, geopolitics in media and practice, and Africa-China visual representations in media and society. As mentioned already, this year's forum is showcasing the Africa-China Journalists Forum, Africa-China Journalists Photo Exhibition, which is standing in the atrium. I'm sure you noted it as you entered the venue, that the hall on your right from the entrance. The exhibition presents a collection of winning images from across Africa that best encapsulate the applicant's interpretation of Africa-China relations, from the ground level, people-to-people engagements, engagement perspective. And we will also be later hearing from the judges of that photo exhibition, who went through all the submissions to select the finalists which are presented at the atrium. And we will also be announcing the first, second, and third prize winners to the photo exhibition submissions. So we're looking forward to that, and the panel of judges who will be assessing the impact of visual representations of Africa-China relations. As noted by our moderator, Dr. Bob Wekesa, I'm just going to be reflecting on the importance of capacity building in Africa's global and local media space. The African continent is growing more robust within its engagements in the global economy, and this is while numerous reports in the media are preempting Africa is the future, more specifically how the continent will be at the center of the world's urban future. Projections hold that by 2050, Africa's population of 1.4 billion will have doubled, noting further the youth bulge that will be seen vastly in the continent. As the future of the world is African, this calls for a conscientious adoption of Africa's agency in its developmental objectives within the global economy. Though some critics acknowledge the opportunities which will be coming with this boom, others hold concerns that Africa's boom will be burdensome and mounting to its existing challenges of poverty, unemployment, governance issues, violent conflict and crimes, outdated infrastructure and socio-economic systems. This therefore requires an intentional approach to steer mechanisms supporting the youth, women, and vulnerable groups in the continent. The media plays a crucial role in identifying the areas for extensive support and monitoring through groundbreaking investigations, shedding light on impacts community by community enhancing its voices and driving Africa's growth and opportunities. The continent still experiences cases of economies which are merely extracted and are consumers of the globe. Too often, the media mimics some of these realities rather than reshaping them by holding public and private entities to account. This requires an informed and sustained media framework which can contribute to sustainable lives and economies on the continent, particularly as it interacts with the rest of the world. The concept of sustainable journalism unlocks several advancements that journalism and media can make in contributing to sustainable societies, and calls for considerations of building and sustaining global African perspectives in the media as it continues to engage with the world to present the ground level perspectives of how lives are affected. Narratives that dominate the global media platforms built outside of the continent are too often given influence and prominence within African news governance. Several media in Africa still relies on secondary sources to inform of their own lived realities. This infiltration is a crippling factor to a media that can be sustaining of itself and to its society, particularly that of African communities. There is a need to build and develop African perspectives to ensure nuance in reporting of Africa's global engagements. Global media reporting of the continent, in turn, reflects on the socio-economics, politics, and governance, particularly as we live in an interconnected and interrelated community where fierce competition from global dominant media companies affect the sustainability of more concentrated media establishments in local communities. As journalism practice and societal expectations of journalists have evolved over the years, it is evident that journalists are expected not only to inform, educate, and entertain societies, but that journalists need to ensure that issues that adversely affect societal development are addressed effectively. This places us at a time where it is most important to rethink and establish a new kind of action-oriented shaping of our media space. Further of opportune is how we can ensure African perspectives are upheld within media reports on Africa's relations with China and the rest of the world, while ensuring the sustainability of media establishments, their reskilling, retraining, and capacity building initiatives in order to become more effective. The Wits Center for Journalism, as mentioned by our dean this morning, was founded over 22 years ago and has established itself as an international profile as one of the leading centers for journalism in Africa. With the center being based at the University of the Witwatersrand, which is ranked highly within the best global universities across a wide set of indicators of excellence. The center combines high-level professional coursework with a theoretical and research focus and has played an important role in providing postgraduate education to working journalists. The center also boasts several professional journalism projects, including the Africa-China Reporting Project. The Africa-China Reporting Project has played a crucial role within the sustainability of content and representation in journalism, as well as in building African perspectives in Africa's global engagements. The project was established, as Dr. Wekesa noted in the beginning of our session, that the project was established in 2009, and it was established under the shared belief that public-oriented contextual journalism would broaden public perceptions and understandings of China-Africa relations, recognizing the need for the mutual understanding of Africa-China relations in two ways, namely quality news reporting and journalists' capacity building. The project aims to improve the quality of reporting on African and Africa-China issues by providing facilitation and capacity building for journalists, media professionals, and researchers. This is accorded through the provision of reporting grants, skills training workshops, reporting resources, networking, and other opportunities. Over the years, the project has grown to amplify African perspectives, recognizing the importance of influencing sustainability of media and society. Further, the project has grown to supporting representations for and of women in Africa, as well as young people. And as a result, the project has shaped into a solid resource and a networking hub for policymakers, business people, journalists, academia, and other stakeholders, and drawing its footprint within the continent and abroad, currently within 33 African countries and over 20 countries within the international community. Furthermore, the project has awarded reporting grants and has trained over 200 journalists through workshops that have been held in South Africa and mainland China, in Hong Kong, in Nigeria, in Malawi, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Tunisia, as well as those that have been held virtually. The project has further facilitated media impact and engagement in Anglophone and Francophone communities and dissemination through the mediums of English, French, Mandarin, and Arabic. As journalism and society is in a crisis of sustainability, referring to the sustainability facing society, we can mention issues such as climate change, poverty, inequality, and crumbling democratic societies. And the sustainability crisis facing journalism is related to issues or stems from an erosion of revenue streams, fierce competition from global social media companies, restrictions of freedoms of expression, media capture, disinformation, and deteriorating public trust in the media. The Africa-China Reporting Project has collaborated with several stakeholders in advancing against issues such as climate change, public health systems, fractures due to COVID-19, and the inequalities that arise. In its impactful collaborations with China Dialogue, the project has awarded over 9 reporting grants and later another 8 during a second round of selections to journalists in Africa. Journalists were encouraged to investigate issues on climate impacts, adaptation, mitigation, energy crises, energy transitions, just transitions, and the social aspects of development, critical mineral mining, low carbon transportation, and electrification. The collaboration also brought about a training workshop on Africa-China relations and the climate crisis to enable journalists, media professionals, and researchers to understand effectively how to investigate the climate crisis. Several publications are as a result of this initiative, including a report which we'll be hearing from one of our journalists during the later sessions of the program. The project has also facilitated other initiatives towards mitigating the sustainability crisis facing society. This includes initiatives on cross-border poaching and trafficking of wildlife, environmental journalism, and training workshops. Furthermore, held in collaboration with NGO China House and stakeholders including the WWF, Vukanau, and the Southern African Wildlife College. The project has further facilitated initiatives within both sustainability crisis facing society and that facing journalism. And an impactful example of that is of 2 reporting workshops which were held on digital identity, data and technology in Africa, where issues around data privacy, surveillance, digital inclusion, online safety, freedom of expression were explored. This resulted on 17 publications which were compiled in a book on 2 Pan-African journalism workshops, and which includes publications from various countries in the continent, as well as the workshop resources and information packs. Then finally, the Africa-China Reporting Project enables and supports journalists to tell stories of how the lives and experiences of people and communities of Africa are impacted by the comprehensive phenomenon of its engagements and interaction with China and other world actors. And in advancing against the sustainability crisis facing journalism, which stems from diminishing revenue streams, fierce competitions, restrictions of freedoms of expression, and diminishing public trust in the media, the project has collaborated with several organizations, including Paradigm Initiative, USAID, Africa Check, the CAAC, which is the Chinese in Africa, Africans in China Network. And the project has further supported local investigative units in Africa to conduct in-depth investigations, and these include IDT in Zimbabwe, CIJM in Malawi, New Narratives in Liberia, Museba Project in Cameroon, iWatch Africa in Ghana, MNN in Lesotho, as well as Ikweli in Mozambique. The role of the media as the fourth estate is crucial in sustaining society, and part of playing a crucial role requires capacity building initiatives which empower African voices and perspectives and media establishments to enable countries to influence growth and development and sustain their communities as they engage in the vast and competitive global economy. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bongiwe. And also just to, as presented by Bongiwe, you can see that this initiative has done quite some work over the years. And the fact that we are all in this room today is attests to the fact that the project has become, in fact, sustainable in itself. We will entertain some questions, comments to Bongiwe's presentation. Even it can be a very tough question. It can be a soft one. Bongiwe can take that. So let's prepare for that interactive session. But for now, I'd like to invite Justus Wanzala, who is Africa editor at China Dialogue Trust. Mr. Wanzala is going to speak to us around the topic of China-Africa relations from the point of view of representations and perspectives in the media. I love the word perspectives because, perspectives can, from a journalistic perspective, we can talk of angles, we can talk of perceptions, but let's hear it from Mr. Wanzala. Welcome.
Thank
a round of applause for him.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, good morning. And all protocols observed. Thank you very much, Bob. As Dr. Bob mentioned, I'm the Africa editor of China Dialogue Trust. And the China Dialogue Trust is a charity organization with the headquarters in the UK, in London. Not to be mistaken by the name China, we all think that we're based in Beijing, but we're actually based in the UK. And what do we do? I said we are a charity organization, but we are a media outlet. And there's this word dialogue in our identity. We give opportunity for people in the global south, Africa included, to give their voices, issues affecting them. And these are academics, journalists, and other people in the villages or the streets and in towns around Africa. We have got a presence regionally. We've got regional editors in West Africa, to Southern Africa and East Africa. And even in this forum, we got our global editor, Tom Baxter, one of our Asian editor, Fidel Sandarai, and Temani Mugunda, who is our regional hub for Southern and Eastern Africa. So, looking at the topic, China engagement in Africa is not new. In the case of East Africa, for instance, we got the first major project was the Tanzania-Zambia Railway, we call it the TAZARA, and it came between the Chinese technology and funding when the late Kambarage Nyerere, the first president of Tanzania, sought the support of China, then under Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao. And this fruitful partnership yielded one of the first linkages, inter-country linkage, from the port of Dar es Salaam to Lusaka in Zambia, and which enhanced trade. Zambia, as you know, it's endowed with copper and other minerals which China needed for its industry. And when this was happening, people were reporting about it. And this is when these perspectives started emerging. But in between, also, we realized that China did not have a foothold in terms of its media presence in Africa. The likes of CGTN and Xinhua came late. The BBC, AFP, Reuters and others were already present in Africa, of course with African stringers, but much more with reporters from the West who did not have much on local nuances when reporting about these issues. But as the Consul General noted, the last 25 years have witnessed rapid engagement with China. He mentioned moving from strategic to comprehensive strategic partnerships. And this also comes at a time when Africa was hungry for development, needed support, having also some disillusion with the Western support, which they say came with the conditions, which China was a bit liberal and could, in a way, try to avoid forcing on African governments. So the areas that our reporters, the areas that we report about are the key issues of debt. We've got element of infrastructure development. We've got partnerships with our institutions, media institutions, the Chinese government supporting a number of media institutions in capacity building, technical areas, and even universities, technology transfer, academic exchanges, and cultural ones that the Consul General reported. In Kenya, for instance, we've got a historical element to it when one of the greatest Chinese kings sent a voyage across the globe, and it had a shipwreck near coastal town of Lamu, and the sailors, having nowhere to go, went to Lamu Island. And as a result, we have got descendants of Chinese people. Currently, a number of them receive scholarships to China, and that is part of the cultural exchange we are talking about. So another area is critical minerals. Chinese companies are heavily investing in critical minerals in Africa, especially in countries like the DRC. So we've got stories on that area. And then the geopolitics, right from the United Nations, the General Assembly, the Security Council, when it comes to voting for issues affecting the globe, there's many times there's African governments aligning with the Chinese perception on key issues. At the African Union, we realize that there's a lot of engagement between the Chinese officials and the African Union officials, and also within our regional economic communities, be it SADC in this region, or ECOWAS in West Africa and EAC, this African community. There's always aspects of engagement on issues that affect these regions, be it investment, be it capacity building, and all that. So those are areas which we report about, and there's a lot that happens when this occurs. When it comes to business, for instance, there's a lot of Chinese techs in the telecommunication sector, and along the West African coast, there's a lot of investment into the fisheries. So all these have given us some exposure and some challenges and some triumphs in terms of how we package access information package for audiences. So I will delve at what are the challenges that we as an editor or regional editors have faced engaging with Chinese establishments, Chinese companies, and the government. One thing that has dominated this engagement from the field is that first, there's the challenge of preconceived bias from the reporters. You realize that a reporter, before they engage a Chinese official or an official of a Chinese company, they already have a misconception that the questions might not be answered, or they will be looked upon as too probing, or they will be ignored. That is one aspect that has come out. And they also pander to fake news, distorted information, disinformation, and are also liable to propaganda that comes either way, either from Chinese sources or from local sources. I will give an example of this kind of situation. For instance, the issue of debt. Kenya is one of the heaviest recipients of Chinese loans, and at times, given our weak economies, we struggle to meet our obligations. So it just crept up in the social media circles that the Chinese will take the port of Mombasa, take over the port of Mombasa to ensure that they reclaim their loans. And this is happening because partly our government officials rarely expose the agreements that they have with the Chinese companies, Chinese governments, so we don't know what is in there, what they are in. So when this comes up, it becomes a bigger conversation, but there's no veracity. It is not established whether that one is something correct. Another thing is that when there is little engagement between the Chinese officials and our journalists, they often do not identify the entry point when seeking information. We are lucky today that we had the Consul General and is inviting people to engage him in the office. But many journalists do not get opportunity to engage with Chinese officials at that level. And added to that is that we take things Chinese in a very collective perspective, so that we don't differentiate the owner of a company and a Chinese official. In Gambia, for instance, when a journalist is writing about concerns of local communities about fishery issues, they will write to the company, but then when talking to them, they will say that the Chinese are not answering our questions. So there's a difference between a Chinese official and an arrogant factory owner who does not have skills of engaging with the media. So that brings in a challenge. And again, about perceptions. When also the journalists don't do much research on their own to establish the facts, they face a challenge. They can go to the market in Banjul and the fish stock is going down, it's becoming expensive. So the narrative on the street is that the Chinese have taken all the fish. And it could be because of the weather, the catch has gone down. So that is an area that is of concern. Another thing that we encounter is that the language barrier. Not many of newsrooms, as we learned even yesterday, have got people who can speak Mandarin and be able to access information in Mandarin, which is relevant to their area of work. So this kind of barriers also limit access to information that they require. And the element of mistrust too. There's just some mistrust between the media and sometimes embassy officials, which can impair the good or positive engagement between the Chinese agencies, and establishments, and our journalists. Okay, so limited research, seeking data and seeking information is one key thing that emanates from reports that we get from the field, and also as I said, lack of Chinese experience with the Chinese establishment or engaging with the right people is a concern, and also inability to hold the local officials to account. For instance, if we got a case of the so-called counterfeit goods entering into our countries, and journalists have reported about this, they will only hit at the element of who's bringing in a Chinese, but they will not look at the kind of protocols in place and who is supposed to be answerable. So these are issues that we tend to try to tell the journalists that don't just look it from one side, also look at the local, where are the loopholes, where are the gaps that allow this to happen, instead of just pushing the blame on one side. How do we now resolve some of these things? So China has always engaged with the journalists through the scholarships, through the opportunities that are there. So rightly, there are people who have got better experience that journalists can use and maybe have got the contacts that are relevant, which can assist them to get to talk to the right people, whether locally or even in China itself. Secondly, another key partner that we find useful is the civil society. The civil society is very aggressive, and I've got researchers, some of them were able to do research in Mandarin, and they will be handy to assist you with information, only that you have got to be very careful, because some of them will tend to be very confrontational in the approach, and for a journalist, you don't want to be barred from entering the consulate or engaging with the Chinese embassy in the country, because you need information from them. Your role is to be factual, not to be biased, and present information with a high element of accuracy. So the civil society is a very, very vital cog in that, in terms of seeking information, data, verifying information at times, which you are good, as I said, you go to take with a pinch of salt, and also be careful, because they can flood you with information more than what you need, because you are not doing advocacy, but you are doing reporting. Another aspect is also growing your networks. Your presence here with the Consul General is one key and an important opportunity for you to get such contacts if you are a South African journalist, for instance. And we also encourage journalists to do much research on the topics that they are writing about. So this involves verifying information too, and ensuring that it is accurate and factual, and doing on-the-ground reporting, interviewing academics and other experts in that area, and including local government officials who might be having data or the kind of not so obvious information that they require. So I will wind up by saying, and just amplifying what the Consul General said, that we need to coordinate, we need to partner and work together to an extent solve this kind of mistrust that exists, and bridge the gaps, and be able to serve our respective audiences better. So those are the perspectives that I have from the China Dialogue Trust in our engagement with our reporters and publics across Africa when it comes to China-Africa relations. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wanzala. I think another round of applause is quite in order. I think you've really helped us to understand some of the perspectives, the issues, the angles, the representations, and that gets us off to a very good starting point. But at this point in time, we'd like to entertain a couple of questions, comments. I hope you can just raise your hand. Is there a roving mic somewhere? And you can point your question to either Ms. Tutu or Mr. Wanzala, any questions or comments? I think as you prepare to pose your questions, maybe I'll start by asking the two speakers a question relating to Western perspectives on China and Africa, or Africa-China relations. What are your views on Western, because Western powers have a great interest in this topic. What will you say to that? Maybe we can start with Bongiwe, then move to Wanzala, as other colleagues prepare their questions.
Thank you so much, Bob. So thanks for the question. Of course, you would ask about Western perceptions, as you are from the African Center for the Study of the United States. I think it is important to have ranging perspectives from various parts of the world. So we can't criticize that it is something that is prevalent, particularly within the reporting of Africa-China relations. I think the danger is when perspectives weigh in on a particular agenda or present one-sided views about the relationship between China and Africa. So I think to that question, I think that Western perspectives are necessary in engagement, they're necessary in the media, but the problem becomes when there is a certain ideology that is being pushed and it's not a balanced reporting, but more of an anti-perspective than trying to be informative to community and society at large. So I think that's as far as I'll speak to that.
Thanks, Bongiwe. Same question to Mr. Wanzala.
Okay, I'll just add something on what Bongiwe said. When you look at the Western media in terms of China engagement in Africa, it is like a dragon that has landed into Africa and wants to swallow, take advantage of this gullible African. But then there's a neighbor who is coming close, who is moving near to just rescue the African from being swallowed by the dragon. So the issue is that when China is involved in the BRI, for instance, there will be a counter gateway Europe, for instance, that wants to do something similar to that, just to counter what China is doing. In a nutshell, it is a competition, but it is like coming to the rescue of the continent from exploitation by China.
Okay. We introduced an interesting point of saying the Western, at least some interest in the West are interested in protecting Africa from China. I think that's the perspective you come with, which is something that we've also read quite a bit in the media, and then it's a narrative that went into the geopolitical competition, domain. But I'd like to see if there's any question or comment from the audience. At least we can entertain two. Okay, I think there and the colleague. I think you introduce yourself so that we know who you are and you can direct the question to whatever. Yeah.
I think. Thanks, colleagues. My name is Ashur Patel. I'm with Institute for Global Dialogue, UNISA. And the perspective that we researching is around the broader BRICS, the BRICS bloc as a bloc of nations. South Africa hosted the summits in August. And how does the broader, obviously there's China-Africa reporting, US in Africa, EU in Africa. How does it sort of dovetail or is differentiated with the broader BRICS group in their investment or engagement with sub-Saharan Africa? Is there divergence? What are the kind of differentials in that reporting as well?
Thanks. I think let's take would you like to respond or we take another question? Okay, so I think our colleague here also introduce yourself and then pose the question. Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much for everyone on the panel. I'm Tom Baxter. I work with China Dialogue. I work with Justice. I wanted to make a very short comment and then a question. The comment is, I think it's important to emphasize just how important it is to keep asking questions, basically. Keep being skeptical of what you read and what you hear in other publications or from your governments or companies. And keep asking those questions. I think from my experience working with Justice and our other colleagues in Africa, reporting on Africa, China in all sorts of sectors and ways it's a very complex beast, partly because there are so many biased narratives out there. And as a result, I just want to say, like, I think we're all in a learning process about how to do this best. And in many ways, it's not so much about what you know as a journalist as about what questions you're asking. And I just encourage everyone to keep asking questions and really get down to that granular detail and nuance. And then my question, briefly, is, so we've talked about the need to have a kind of to have African perspectives and African voices in this. How best to amplify those so that they're really heard within Africa and outside of Africa and in China?
To our speakers, there are two questions. I think once colleagues Bongiwe and Wanzala respond, we'll be breaking out for tea, coffee. So over to you. Yeah? And of course, we'll be going into another session as well. So over to you.
The question on the BRICS. BRICS itself, looking at who are the players in the BRICS, this China, Russia, the South Africa. It is a counter to the EU, is counter to North America, and the interests do not converge. So when we are looking at how this is perceived, it's because that's another extension of China and Russia. So the narratives will not change in terms of how the Western media will look at the way China issues are highlighted here. And the concerns of BRICS, for instance, are de-dollarization, for instance. And this is a topic that if you are not talking about the dollar, then you are talking about the yuan, isn't it, as a substitute. So the narratives that will emerge in the Western media will be that this another, not a dragon really, not a bear, but I don't know which animal is this, that we've got to fight. And so it emerges that it will be totally different, but look actually the same, the way CNN, the way FP and others will depict to their audience. I don't know if I've answered your question. Okay.
There's a second question.
The second,
both questions, then we pass on.
I can touch on, but then Bongoya can amplifying. Okay. In this case, we've got to focus when it comes to sources to our African or African-oriented academics, sources, and also amplify the voices on the ground, the people. Not really focusing on the government alone, but going to the ground and getting the voices of the people who are affected by situations, or whether it is a mining activity, or whether it is a disaster issue. So to amplify the African voices means getting deep down to talk to people who are affected and those who are knowledgeable about these issues, and also not having, of course, a biased mind when working on such stories. So the good thing is that we have got a growing number of organizations, be it civil society, that are able to link our reporters with Africa-oriented academics and sources. So that probably will play a major role in making African voices heard at the global level or regionally as such.
Thanks, Wanzala. I think we move over to Bongiwe.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you, Bob. So I'll start with the question on how we amplify African voices and perspectives. I think, as mentioned in the presentation, and over numerous discussions, what is quite clear is that journalists require resources to support their investigations, and that is including financial support for them to be able to undertake their field work and to produce the reports on Africa-China relations. So I think that's the first point on how we can best amplify these voices. It's by providing those local journalists who have the ability to go within the communities or even live within the communities, because they have that perspective to be able to tell the story, rather than having someone coming from another country to tell the story of people who can actually relay that themselves if they were provided that adequate support financially and by means of resources and information. So I think if we can focus on local journalists and enhance their capabilities by means of financial resources, as well as training resources, and that can be in various information packs. The Africa-China Reporting Project has a number of resources that we share on our training website for journalists to be able to get the needed skills and knowledge and information on how to go about investigating Africa-China relations by means of understanding the ground work within the relationship, like how did it come about, so that when you go into the field, you already have some background supporting the investigation you're about to undertake. And so I think that's most important, to amplify those voices. It's resources and training. And I think what's also important when you have to enhance and reflect and to have representation in the investigations that you're producing is to interview your local experts, to be able to tell you and narrate exactly what is their experiences as you're investigating the stories. And we've found that one of the best ways with researchers that are conducting research on China's engagements in Africa, the best way to reach out to local voices is by conducting surveys and questionnaires, and you can get a huge amount of responses in a short amount of time. I think we've seen with our regional leads who are going to be presenting later today, that's one of the most effective mechanisms to try and reach a huge group of people. So our regional leads are investigating the landscapes within each of the regions in Africa. So it's not possible for them to physically go within each of those countries in their regions. And one of the ways we found to be able to mitigate this challenge is by them sending out questionnaires and surveys, and they've seen how effective that approach is from the responses that they've received. And in that way, you're able to gather information, local perspectives, those local voices. You're able to enhance what people are experiencing and be able to tell that in your reports. So I think those are the one of the ways that we can be enhancing African perspectives. And then to the question on the BRICS bloc, I believe there's a lot of learning that is still happening within BRICS, and there's a lot of fragility in the relationship, although we can appreciate what it presents for the African continent, with South Africa leading and being the spear to contribute the benefits that it is receiving from being a part of that bloc. So I won't comment to largely on that as the next session is looking at those discussions between US and China. So I'm sure that's going to come up. So I'll leave it to the experts on US-China relations and on the BRICS to be able to respond to that. But essentially, I think there's a lot of learning that we're yet to see, and we can appreciate the opportunity that the blocs presents for South Africa in how it can promote the standing of the African continent at large. I mean, we saw from the summit that Xi Jinping participated in African Leaders Summit. So those are the kind of opportunities that African leaders and African stakeholders can take advantage of using South Africa as the entry point to the BRICS. So I think there's a lot to look forward to and a lot of learning coming from that. Thank you.
Thanks very, very much, Bongiwe. We now stand at 11:36 minutes after 11. So without, I will have, been interested in also contributing to these discussions. But in the interest of time, I suppose it's only better that we move to the next session. I believe I saw my colleague, whom I haven't seen in many months, Cobus van Staden, who is also been a pioneer in this field for many years standing. I think it's your session, Cobus, so maybe we'll transition, we'll leave the podium now, or the high table. We've enjoyed ourselves for those few minutes, but it's time to move on now. But thanks, I think another round of applause to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.